I'm still not over the Disney film Strange World. If you haven't seen it, if there's any chance that, I don't know, if you want like the full experience, seriously, go watch it and don't listen to me spoil it and try to give that experience in words because it's not quite the same. I watched it when I was like really upset too over the holidays, and it definitely had a hand in pulling me out of that quite dark, fractured sort of time. I was just so delighted and like so surprised, and the whole story is very, I would say it has, the spirit of it is like very much like a myth, and it is, what I see in it is just a beautiful, simple, modern like statement of the basic idea of essentially the symbolic world or the magic world. So, and again, I'm just gonna say the whole plot of the movie. So, if there's like, go pirate it. It's so good. But there's this little sort of community or like a country that is bounded by a mountain range. So basically a world, because any world is like a coherent space that has a certain border and a certain boundary beyond which is the unknown. And there's this family of explorers, the Clades, that the film centers around, and the grandpa, like, his whole life's mission is to know what is beyond the mountains. And he's this explorer and sort of conqueror, not as much, but was like explorer kind of thing. So like a very masculine like pattern that he's doing of like seeking and bringing into the domain of the known. They go on an expedition into the mountains. His son, with like the father, I'll say, is less of an explorer type, and he on this one expedition to the mountains, he and his grandpa have a falling out. His father, the grandfather, have a falling out. The grandfather goes further and is like, I'll go on alone, and just disappears on his quest to go beyond the mountains. And the son returns home with this plant that he's discovered called Pando, that is basically like an electricity plant, and he starts a farm, and he gives his community like this technology, and it's cool, like steampunky kind of style, and so they're all thriving on this technology that they discovered. And so his whole thing is, let's not forget about what's beyond our world, let's make our world better with this discovery that I've found. But the inciting event of the movie is that Pando starts dying one day and like losing power. And their society now depends on it. So they find out that like the vines of this plant are all connected lower down. And so deep down, sort of under the roots of the mountains and the roots of Pando, there has to be some kind of heart that's the center of all the Pando, and something is going on down there. So the whole family, the father, his wife, and their son, and some other people, go on this mission to like save their world and the power that keeps their world going. So they like have this hole dug, and they're descending deeper and deeper, and then they fall through like the bottom of the mountains inside the world into like this whole alien world. It's very Journey to the Center of the Earth. So beautiful. I'm trying to find a program on Windows that can like overlay pictures easily. It's preferably free. Haven't yet, but it's like such a cool design to the world. And they're just like stunned and like exploring, and the world is all like moving. It looks sort of like underwater, and everything's moving, and then sort of land, like the boundaries seem to be shifted a little bit or melted a little bit, because like things that are these huge sort of pieces of land can also move, and then like these big creatures will like drop little jelly creatures that will regenerate like the grass and become that. So there's this sort of smooth movement in and out of like what we would consider inert matter and then life. And yeah. So they find the vines of Pando also traversing this world, and there are these like creatures attacking it. And they find out that Pando can damage those creatures, so they're like following the vines and trying to defend Pando from these hostile alien creatures. During this, they discover the grandfather from all those years ago, who is like, has on his own quest also fell into this world and got lost, and has been just like surviving in there with his flamethrower, fighting off all of the creatures. And he says that in this world everything is alive, and that every trail he blazes, it just grows right back and covers it up. Meanwhile, the grandson, I don't remember his name, I should look it up. Okay, Ethan, the grandson, has a different approach to both his grandfather, who's like, explore, go outside the mountains, destroy the monsters, and his father, who's mostly focused on Pando and keeping the peace back in their world. The grandson wants to explore and wants to understand these creatures instead of immediately viewing them as enemies. He like forms a friendship with one of the little blob creatures, and he wants to like be in harmony with them essentially and understand them. And he has this game that he loves that serves as a sort of microcosmos in the film of like the whole attitude that he's trying to live with, because the point of the game is that there's no hostile. The point is to live in harmony with your environment rather than like to kill something, or like there are no dedicated hostile creatures in the game. It's all about the way that you position yourself relative to them. Anyhow, he loves it in this new environment. And it's basically what I was talking about with the whole like humanize the squid and like self-other relationships. And also, whereas the father and grandfather are more like the masculine in relation to the world, either wanting to just explore and go further, or to sort of use and like discover resources, the grandson instantiates more of the feminine wisdom of like negotiating with the other. Jonathan Peugeot, I think, and Jordan Peterson had a video on this recently of like an interpretation of the Garden of Eden in which Eve is this mediator between the snake, the mysterious, wordless potential of creation, and then the realm of language and the ordered world. So there's a lot of tension between the three of them, of course, with their different worldviews, as they are continuing to follow the vines. But in the end, the grandson's negotiation with the different creatures gets them past all of these dangerous, like this lake of acid and stuff, and gets them to the heart of Pando, just as they expected. And it's like this mass of vines, and all of the hostile creatures are like flying and crawling in and attacking it. And so they say, oh, Pando has withdrawn its energy from above, from the plants above, because it's having this whole battle to survive here. So that's why our power is like going out. So we need to like destroy these creatures. And they start like, Pando harms the creature, so they start like making this whole weapon to like distribute the dust across them and save the heart. There's a whole like family argument, and the father and son stumble outside, like through these tunnels and into the open air, and they discover that they're outside the mountains. And what's out there is just empty ocean, like they've been on an island this whole time. And then they turn back toward the like foresty hills and the mountains. That's their home. And this enormous eye opens up out of the mountainside. So this entire time, their world has been on the back of some gigantic living creature. And what they have been exploring in the inside, like they went through its skin and they were in the inside of it. And the like blood basically of all these different flying creatures, and the acid like stomach, and the sort of windy forest of the lungs, and like they were inside of this living being. And keep in mind also that I'm watching this like at night and feeling really fractured in my world myself and quite miserable. And then just complete like shift in the whole way that you're framing this story, and like all the story elements suddenly come together and like it makes sense. And the feeling of the world, both the ordered parts, you know, their Pando world above, and like the chaos parts of the inside, being a part of a living whole. And that epiphanic kind of insight. And suddenly understanding and suddenly having like a gestalt to apply and some sort of meaning and coherence for everything. That brought across perfectly the feeling of beginning to see the cosmos and the world, our world, as a symbol, as the symbolic world, as a symbol of the ineffable, as a symbol for life. Which is to say, the world, the body, and also language is a sort of temple and vessel for the ineffable, in other words, for life, without being able to totally reduce life. You know, that's sort of in a dimension beyond, but we have this vessel for it. And yeah, so you're just sat there just like stunned. And of course, along with this realization, they understand that like the heart of Pando that they've been following this whole time is actually the heart of this whole creature. And Pando is this parasite that has wrapped itself around the heart and covered it up. And so what they thought was their enemy, those like creatures that were trying to destroy Pando, that's actually the immune system of the creature trying to defend itself. So they went down there to save their world, right? And well, the grandpa went down there to discover what was beyond their world. But they discover that the life of their world is actually, that they have to save, is not what they thought it was. It's an even deeper heart. Pando is just this sort of flashy, outward covering that is killing the true life of their world. And it's not that, like, technology bad inherently, right? But this form of technology happens to be against the health of the world and of the whole, including the people, because the people are in this ecosystem as well. I mean, the environmentalist parallels are obvious, but it is not. There's a deeper and, like, broader meaning to it. Pando is like my go-to analogy now for technic, basically, for the law and this sort of system, this sort of my other word for it is poisoned rationality, which was from a mishearing of that lyric about poise and rationality from that one song, I Write Sins Not Tragedies. But anyhow, it's this system, right, that imitates the heart of the world and sort of imitates the world and is entwined with it and outside of it, and sort of purports to be the driving force of the world and of life. And we could think about technology, we could think about power, we can think about money, like you can put a lot of things in here, even just like knowledge. Anything will fit into there. But like I was talking about in the, it used to be called, what's it called now? In the, like, transcending the ego and language video, this is the body of death that lives only by destroying the real heart. So it's self-destructive in the end, and it's destructive of everything else. And so in this world, and really in the world, like like the grandson was talking about with his game, there are no, like, inherently evil entities, but there is destruction itself, which has to be destroyed, paradoxically enough, and you get into the whole conquering death by death. And Pando is just like a very slight metaphorical sort of instantiate, like making it physical of that system, that pattern of technic, of the law, of death. And the quests of the various generations in this family end up coming together because of this epiphany. Like, the grandfather wants to get beyond the mountains, but the father is more concerned with going deeper and finding the heart so that he can save Pando, so he can save his world. Well, those end up being the same thing, because what's sort of deeper is, well, beyond the mountains is just ocean, and then you can turn back around and look at the world that's always been all that there is. And of course the grandson's quest to, like, understand the way that this alien world works. It all ends up coming together into this same discovery and experience of the life and the unity of the world. And just like in the game, it's about having the right relationship, having the right priorities, right? So you're going to put the real heart over the Pando heart that's just an imitation. So Ordo Amoris, where's your attention, where's your worship, and having that on the highest telos. And the highest sort of aspect in the world, and then being in harmony and sort of having the right relationship to the different aspects of the world so that, you don't hurt them and they don't hurt you. And, I mean, it's such a simple and such a rich sort of concept and story. there's a lot of different things you could draw from it, but also something about perspective, and how each of them sees this alien world. The grandfather got lost in there years and years ago, but he never saw this unity. Like to him, basically, this whole living world that he was suddenly plunged into the heart of was hell, and was like complete enmity and chaos, and he just wanted to literally burn it away. Whereas the grandson sees it as like a place of wonder immediately. So two very different perspectives. Even though at that time neither of them had that insight about, oh, this is literally a living creature, their hearts and the way they were aligned to the world, one of them had sort of the correct instinct all along, and the other one was going on with fear and destruction. It's just so cool. It's just such a cool, like, world building. I love the turtle world. It is a turtle. At the end, it, like, zooms out and shows. It is not, in fact, turtles all the way down, though, at least not in that film. But, like, thinking about how this fits into the Christian picture of, like, the world as the body of the Logos and the body of Christ. The one sort of fear, I guess, when thinking about the world as this living creature that's bigger than us and has its own needs that may be at odds with ours, is that, like, okay, if the world is this gigantic turtle and our technology that fuels our world up above is, like, choking out its heart, like, what we have to sort of sacrifice our humanity just for the concerns of this alien creature that we're suddenly, like, the parasites on, etc. But that's not quite true, because humans are a part of the picture too. And, in Christian terminology, it's not just the body of some gigantic creature, but also the body of the Logos, the body of Christ, who took on humanity. So our sort of human concerns and needs in life does fit in to the world also, or can fit in too. And even, like, our morality and sense of justice and need for meaning and things like that sometimes nature seems to be cold to. Like, that is the heart of things as well. But it's a matter of what garments are we wearing. Garments of death or garments of glory, right? We have this power of technology and consciousness. How are we using it? How does it fit into the world? Because that Pando society was essentially clothing themselves in garments of death and identifying themselves with those. And had they continued to permanently say, no, we are, Pando, we need this, then yeah, they would have been aligned with death, and humanity would have been a parasite on that creature, and eventually the turtle would have died, and the people would have died, and everything would have died. But they were able to separate themselves from the false, state of affairs and the harmful, like, system of their society, and destroy that, give that up, so that they could find a new way, like they show a bit at the end of the movie, of being human and with wisdom, like, fitting into the bigger picture too. I don't know if that part was clear, but I know that is sort of a concern maybe with the whole, the idea of recognizing the other, or the world as an other, or the world as a living thing that we're only one part of, is like, am I going to lose my, like, what I need to survive? And no, not if we're living with wisdom and we recognize what we really are and what we really need, because the heart of the world is the heart of the Logos, is the heart of Christ, is a human heart. So I did like bees today, and that reminded me of this poem that I wrote a while ago when I had like bee nail polish on, like with those stickers sort of thing. And it had little bees, and I was looking at those, and I was thinking about what is the bees like perspective on life. And this has ended up being a very symbolic world poem, even though at the time I was pre-epiphany. As always, my writing is like always prophetic, but yeah, so I'm gonna read that because it sort of ties into this whole idea of different levels of reality, but at each level it's a gestalt, it's a living whole held together by love, except for the pando, except for the force of technic and destruction and death itself, which must be killed and must be destroyed. Bees trapped in nail polish amber. Pink sunset sky, the rest of the nail polish was pink. Pink sunset sky pressed flat. Bees buzzing start-stop yellow-black lines, coal and ochre, citron and jet, honey and the black hollow of hunger. To what purpose? Each ring-finger worker, isolated in its chip of sky, loops a fictitious trail nowhere nearer the home realm of the hive in the middle nail. Abstracted honeycombs, queenless, bleeding evening sky, 4 cells sheened in a sweet sun-gold gradient. 3 drones drift, 1 wing and an abdomen cut off by finger that frames their picture world. Pinky and thumb window clear sky. 1 tear shows the nail below. Different levels. A bee philosopher's ultimate reality would be a ridged fingernail, would be a warm hand, veined, round, upholding their chipping shimmer of cosmos, palm connecting their scraps of sky, gesture swooping them, working grasp and pull, swarming them in echo.